Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
The smoke from the grill rose slowly in the air, carrying the irresistible smell of freshly grilled burgers. The crackling of the meat over the flames blended with the lively buzz of conversation around the table. Ethan, with his laid-back posture and easy smile, was busy making sure everyone got the perfect dinner, just like he always did on those rare occasions when he managed to bring the family together. Rebecca, meanwhile, moved naturally around the house's outdoor space. She poured lemonade into cups, checked if anyone needed more ice, and occasionally exchanged a few casual words with the guests. Her gaze, however, had a definite destination. Nathan was seated at the other end of the yard, talking to Lucas about the internship opportunity he'd offered. He gestured confidently, explaining how the real estate market was growing and how it could open doors for the young man. Lucas listened closely, soaking up every word like a student eager to learn from someone experienced. But as Nathan spoke, his eyes occasionally scanned the area, quietly meeting Rebecca's. It wasn't just any look. It was a quick glance, but full of meaning. A silent exchange of secrets, a connection that none of the others could possibly suspect. Rebecca felt her heart speed up for a moment, like she'd been caught doing something forbidden, even though no one had noticed. She tried to look away, focusing on gathering empty cups and maintaining her composure, but that presence. Nathan's presence affected her in a way she couldn't ignore. Every time he looked at her like that, it was as if an invisible thread pulled her back to something she was trying, without success, to keep under control. On the other side, Ethan, oblivious to everything, finally served the burgers, catching everyone's attention. His smile was genuine, filled with joy at being home. His military missions had kept him away for so long that now he cherished every moment with his family. "Come on, eat while it's hot," he said cheerfully, serving Lucas first. Rebecca used the distraction to take a deep breath. She needed to pull herself together. She needed to be the perfect wife, the flawless hostess. Nathan, however, knew every nuance of her body language. He noticed how she quickly wet her lips before turning away, how her fingers tightened slightly around the glass she was holding. Small signs, but they spoke volumes to someone who knew what to look for. He took a sip of his beer and looked away at the exact moment Ethan turned toward him. Everything seemed in order. Everything seemed normal. But beneath that apparent calm, old secrets pulsed between them. Secrets that night, Rebecca felt heavier than ever. The house began to empty out. The smell of grilled meat still hung in the air, mixed with the faint citrus aroma of the lemonade served during dinner. The last guests said their goodbyes with hugs and promises of future get-togethers, while Ethan took charge of gathering the dishes and cleaning up the evening's mess. He seemed satisfied, happy to be home, like a man who could finally breathe after being away for so long. Rebecca watched everything from a distance, a still full glass in her hands but no desire to drink. Her gaze moved discreetly through the room, calculating each movement, waiting for the right moment. Nathan was still there. She saw him walking down the hallway, away from the rest of the people, heading toward the bathroom or maybe just looking for a bit of privacy. Her heart pounded harder. Opportunities like that were rare and risky, but right then, the need to talk to him outweighed the fear. Rebecca carefully set her glass on the table and followed the same path without drawing attention. Her hands were cold, a sign of the adrenaline coursing through her. When she turned into the hallway, she found Nathan leaning against the wall, as if he already knew she would follow him. For a brief moment, they just stared at each other. The silence between them felt heavy, full of unspoken words and emotions both were trying to ignore. Rebecca glanced over her shoulder, making sure no one could see them. The risk made her stomach twist, but she didn't back down. "We need to be more careful," she whispered, trying to keep her voice steady but feeling her nerves slip into her words. Nathan tilted his head slightly, his gaze carrying something hard to decipher. There was a hint of amusement in his eyes, but also a weight, a tiredness that hadn't been there years ago, when everything seemed simpler. "You worry too much," he said, keeping his voice low, almost a murmur. Rebecca let out a short sigh. How could he be so untroubled? How could he act as if there was no risk at all, when her entire life could collapse with a single slip? "Ethan is here. He's different. More alert. I don't want him to suspect anything." Nathan folded his arms, studying her for a moment. He knew Rebecca well enough to sense that her tone wasn't just about the fear of being caught. There was something more there, something she didn't want to admit. "Or maybe the problem is something else," he said, lowering his voice even more. "Maybe it's because now that he's back, you don't know what you want anymore." Rebecca felt a chill run down her spine. Her throat tightened, but she didn't reply. She couldn't. Because deep down, she knew Nathan was right. Rebecca woke up that morning with a strange feeling in her chest. The bedroom was quiet except for the gentle sound of Ethan's breathing beside her. His body was still turned toward her, like even in his sleep, he wanted to keep her close. There was something tender about that gesture, something that made her feel an unbearable guilt. She stayed still for a few moments, observing the details of Ethan's face, the small expression lines he'd acquired over the years. Each line told a story, a memory, a sacrifice he'd made for her and for their children. And yet there she was, waking up next to him while her heart pounded for another man. She closed her eyes for a moment and took a deep breath before sliding out of bed, stepping onto the cold floor carefully so as not to wake him. In the kitchen, she made coffee like she always did, trying to keep herself busy with routine. It should have been automatic, but that day every action felt heavy. As the coffee brewed, she grabbed her phone and checked the screen. No message from Nathan. He always sent something. A sarcastic comment about the previous night, a simple, "good morning," as if they were just friends exchanging everyday messages. But this time, there was nothing. She felt a pang in her chest. She tried to convince herself it was for the best, that a bit of distance was exactly what she needed to get her head straight. But as the day wore on, his absence gnawed at her in a way that left her restless. Ethan noticed. He watched her between sips of coffee, his sharp eyes catching every little distraction. Rebecca didn't know if she was being obvious or if he just knew her too well. "You're quiet today," he remarked, flipping through a newspaper without really seeming interested in it. Rebecca forced a smile, looking away. "I'm just tired." Ethan didn't answer right away. His fingers drummed against the table for a few seconds before he let out a small sigh. "I thought you'd be happy I'm back." The comment had no accusation, no bitterness, just a statement. But it hit her hard, like an invisible punch. Rebecca opened her mouth to reply, but before she could think of anything, she heard her phone buzz. Her heart raced. She grabbed it quickly and locked the screen before Ethan could see the name. Nathan. She swallowed hard, feeling her face flush. "I am happy," she finally said, but her voice was soft, lacking conviction. Ethan didn't press further. He just nodded slowly, like he was filing that answer away to analyze later. Rebecca stood up in a hurry, picking up her empty cup and taking it to the sink. Her hands were shaking. Ethan was right there, so close, so present, and yet her heart was responding to a single message she hadn't even read. She was trapped between two lives, and at that moment, she no longer knew which one was real. She pretended nothing was wrong, left the kitchen, and headed upstairs to the bedroom. Nathan's message kept flashing on her screen, calling out like a temptation Rebecca knew she shouldn't give in to, but couldn't ignore. With her hands still damp from washing dishes, she unlocked her phone and read what he'd written. "I need to see you. Today." It was an order disguised as a request. An invitation that felt heavy, like the air around her had grown denser. She hesitated, shutting her eyes for a moment and listening to Ethan's footsteps on the stairs in the background. He was there, in the same house, trusting her, believing that everything was exactly as it should be. Then, without letting herself think too much, Rebecca typed her reply, "Where?" Nathan answered within seconds. "The same place as always. At 4. She deleted the conversation right away, feeling her heart pound against her chest. A warning bell went off in her mind, a final chance to say no, to choose safety, to choose Ethan. But desire, the need for something she couldn't even name, pulled her in the other direction. The hours that followed were torturous. Every minute felt like a reminder of what she was about to do. Rebecca tried to behave normally, throwing herself into mundane tasks, leaving to run little errands, but the clock was ticking. The meeting was approaching like an unavoidable fate. Before she realized it, she was in her car, driving away from the house, away from Ethan, heading to the place where she wouldn't have to pretend. The hotel was discreet, the kind of place that didn't draw attention. She parked in the far corner of the lot, took a few deep breaths before getting out and crossing the lobby with her head down. The receptionist recognized her from her previous visits and didn't need to ask where she was going. She just smiled knowingly and pointed her to the room number without a word. Rebecca climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling heavier. When she reached the door, she hesitated for a second. Then she heard the lock turn from the other side. Nathan opened the door before she could knock. His eyes traveled over her from head to toe, filled with that intensity that always made her forget the rest of the world. Before she could say anything, he pulled her inside and shut the door behind her. They kissed before any words were spoken. It was a hot, possessive kiss, brimming with urgency. But something about it felt different. Rebecca sensed it the moment their bodies pulled away for a second. Nathan was serious. Not like usual. She frowned, feeling unease grow inside her. "What's wrong?" she asked, still trying to catch her breath. Nathan ran his hands through his hair, like he was searching for the right words. He was never one for beating around the bush, but this time he seemed to weigh every syllable. "This can't go on like this, Rebecca," he finally said. "I don't want to be just this anymore." A chill ran through her. "What do you mean?" Nathan stepped back, crossing his arms. His gaze, normally full of desire and teasing, now held something deeper. "I want you to choose." Rebecca blinked, stunned. "Choose?" He nodded. "Yes. Either you stay with me, or you end this once and for all." The room felt smaller, stifling. Rebecca's stomach churned. She'd known this moment would come. Sooner or later, Nathan wouldn't settle for just being a secret. But being prepared for something doesn't mean you're ready to face it. And right then, she wasn't sure she could choose. Rebecca left the hotel as though she were running away. Her breathing was uneven, her hands shaking on the steering wheel. What had just happened wasn't just another forbidden meeting with Nathan. No. This time, something had changed. Nathan wanted more. He wanted her to choose. His words still echoed in her mind as she drove, like they were etched into her skin. "Either you stay with me, or you end this." She had no idea how to respond. No idea how to decide. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff, unable to step forward but too scared to step back. The drive home was a blur. Her thoughts were chaotic, tangled between guilt and desire, between what she wanted and what she knew was right. Before she knew it, she was pulling into the garage. She took a deep breath before stepping out, trying to steady her expression before going inside. The house was quiet. Ethan was on the couch, the TV on, but he didn't seem to be watching anything. When she walked in, he looked up. "Where were you?" There was no rush in his voice, no obvious suspicion, just genuine curiosity. Rebecca forced a smile, ignoring the tightness in her chest. "I had a few errands in town," she answered, heading straight for the kitchen so she could busy herself with something, anything. She opened the fridge, grabbed a water bottle, but her hands shook so much that the cap slipped from her fingers and fell to the floor. Damn it! She hurried to pick it up, feeling her face burn. Everything inside her screamed that she needed to leave, to get a minute alone so she could think. But before she could get away, Ethan spoke again. "Rebecca." There was a different tone in his voice. She turned slowly to face him, meeting his eyes. He watched her in a way he hadn't in a long time. "You're acting strange." The statement was calm but sharp. Rebecca's mouth went dry. Her heart pounded. Ethan didn't know. He couldn't know. Could he? She tried to laugh it off. "Me? Strange? Don't be silly. I'm just tired." But Ethan didn't look away. He didn't smile, didn't joke. He just studied her, like he was trying to figure out something. Rebecca felt suffocated. She mumbled some excuse and left the kitchen before he could say anything else. She rushed upstairs, into the bedroom, shutting the door behind her and leaning against it as though she needed a physical barrier to keep the guilt from crushing her. She couldn't go on like this. But the thought of losing Nathan felt unbearable too. What she didn't realize was that downstairs, Ethan kept staring into space, his fingers slowly tapping on the table. He'd noticed something that day. Something he couldn't ignore. And for the first time, he began to wonder if he really should. The silence in the house had never felt so heavy. Rebecca locked herself in the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and let the water run, as if the sound could muffle the thoughts pounding in her head. The mirror reflected a face she barely recognized. Her eyes darted anxiously, her lips pressed tight. There was a question lurking in her mind, one she tried so hard not to ask. If Ethan found out, what would she do? She took a deep breath, trying to shake off the pressure pressing down on her shoulders. But the problem was that the choice was no longer in her hands. Ethan's demeanor that night had made her realize that. The way he looked at her. The silent pause before he asked where she'd been. He was seeing, sensing, picking up on things. And it terrified her. So when her phone vibrated beside the sink, her heart nearly jumped out of her chest. She picked it up quickly, expecting to see Nathan's name. But it wasn't him. It was Ethan. Rebecca stood there, frozen, feeling a chill spread over her skin. He had never texted her from inside the same house before. A simple action, but one that felt strangely unsettling. With hesitant fingers, she opened the notification. "I need to talk to you. Now." In the living room. Rebecca's mouth went dry. She turned to the mirror again. Her own reflection seemed to challenge her. "Stay calm," she told herself. "Breathe. Act normal." But there was no such thing as normal anymore. Slowly, she opened the bathroom door and walked downstairs, each step careful. The house was dark, lit only by the soft glow of a lamp by the couch. Ethan was sitting there, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. Rebecca tried to smile. "What's going on?" Ethan looked up at her, and in that moment, she knew. He knew. No explanations were needed, no excuses. His eyes said it all. He wasn't furious, he wasn't out for revenge. It was worse. It was the look of someone who'd given up. Rebecca felt her chest tighten. Ethan reached for something on the couch beside him and placed it on the coffee table. It was a photo. Her stomach turned before she even saw it clearly. She stepped closer, and when she finally looked at the picture, her blood ran cold. It was her. Her and Nathan. Standing outside the hotel, locked in a kiss frozen in a moment that now felt like a verdict. Rebecca covered her mouth with her hands, unable to contain the shock. Her head spun. How? How had Ethan gotten this photo? Who took it? She opened her mouth to speak, but Ethan raised a hand, stopping her before any words came out. "I don't want to hear it." His voice was low, too calm. Like the eye of a hurricane before it strikes. Rebecca felt desperation well up inside her. "Ethan, He got to his feet, took off his wedding ring, and placed it on the table beside the photo. "You made your choice." Her eyes went wide. "Wait, but he was already heading to the door, grabbing his car keys. "Ethan, please." He paused for a second, his hand on the doorknob. Then, without turning around, he said only, "I always knew." And he left. The door closed behind him, and in that instant, Rebecca felt the weight of the emptiness. What had once been a choice was now an ending. And she realized, too late, that she had lost everything. Rebecca's phone slipped from her hands as she tried to dial Nathan's number. Her fingers trembled, her heart pounding in her chest. When the call finally connected, she pressed the phone tight against her ear, pacing back and forth in the living room like it might relieve the panic consuming her. It rang for a long time before anyone picked up. "Nathan?" Her voice shook, broken by ragged breaths. There was a tense silence on the other end, followed by the sound of strained breathing. "Rebecca?" He sounded confused. She squeezed her eyes shut, trying not to cry. "He knows." Silence. "What?" "Ethan knows. He knows everything." The silence this time felt even heavier. She heard the phone slip from Nathan's hand before he snatched it back up. "What do you mean he knows? How?" "He had a photo, Nathan." Rebecca sobbed. "Someone saw us, someone took a picture." He threw it down on the table and, Nathan didn't say anything. Rebecca could almost feel his panic through the phone. "Damn it," he ran a hand through his hair. "Damn it, damn it, damn it." The two were overcome by fear. Nathan began pacing in his office, his hurried footsteps echoing through the line. Then something worse happened. "Rebecca," his voice had changed, growing quieter and more tense. "What?" she asked, a new chill running through her. "Ethan, he's here." Rebecca froze. "What?" Nathan hurried to the window. Ethan's car was parked right in front of his house. The headlights were off, but he knew Ethan was sitting inside. Just parked there. Just waiting. "He didn't get out," Nathan murmured, breathing hard. Rebecca felt her chest tighten. "What's he doing?" Nathan swallowed, keeping his eyes on the car. "Nothing. He's just there." Time stretched endlessly. Minutes felt like hours. Nathan kept pacing, sneaking glances through the curtain, waiting for Ethan to do something, anything. But Ethan didn't move. He stayed there. For a whole hour. The silence was unbearable. His car was just parked on the street, a dark presence that seemed to push in on Nathan from every angle. "What do I do? What do I do?" Nathan muttered to himself, barely realizing he was still holding the phone. Rebecca sniffled on the other end of the line, her voice full of dread and desperation. "I don't know." Then, without warning, Ethan's car moved. Nathan watched in disbelief as the door opened slowly. Ethan stepped out. He looked expressionless, but his eyes carried a heaviness that made Nathan's heart pound. He didn't look furious. He didn't look like he was about to attack. He looked disappointed. Ethan walked up to the front door. Nathan stood frozen, phone still pressed to his ear, unable to react. The doorbell rang. Nathan swallowed hard and went to the door, each step feeling heavier than the last. He opened it. And there they were, face to face. Ethan's stare cut into Nathan like a silent blade. Nobody spoke. Nathan braced himself, waiting for a punch, a shout, anything. But Ethan just took a deep breath, looking at him for a long moment that felt like forever. Finally, Ethan shook his head. A simple gesture. One that conveyed more than any insult could. Disapproval. Shame. Contempt. And, without saying a word, he turned around and left. Nathan stood there in the doorway, the weight in his chest growing as he watched Ethan get into his car and disappear into the night. Rebecca, still clutching her phone, waited for something, anything, but the call was already over. Hours later, Ethan went home. He entered quietly, unhurried. He found Rebecca sitting on the couch, eyes red, knees pulled up to her chest. He stood in front of her for a few moments, his face void of emotion. Then he said the only thing that mattered: pack your bags and get out of this house. Rebecca felt the floor drop out from under her. Ethan, please, let's talk. He didn't seem interested in talking. You have 1 hour. She blinked, her heart racing. Where am I supposed to go? He let out a humorless laugh and shook his head. You know exactly where you're going, so don't ask me that. Then, with nothing more to say, he walked upstairs, leaving her behind. She packed her bags in silence. Rebecca left the house that had been hers for so many years, not knowing where to go, not understanding how things had come to this. Weeks went by. The divorce was finalized. Lucas stayed with Ethan after finding out the truth about his mother. And Nathan? Nathan became a stranger. That forbidden passion, the desire that had once seemed irresistible, lost its appeal. What had once seemed impossible to resist now felt like a burden. Rebecca didn't stay with him in the end. She ended up alone. And all that remained was the emptiness of her own choices. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.